What's up, everybody? Welcome to the channel. So it's that time of year where I do my quarterly wrap up, which means I'm going to talk about all the books that I read in July, August, and September. So buckle in and let's get started. Right, July. July was a big month for me. That is when I launched my YouTube channel and I put out my very first wrap up video. And wow, it's been 3 months already. So here we go. July. All right, book number one, The Impossible Thing by Belinda Bauer, a mystery whodunit, told with dual timelines. So we've got one that takes place back in, I want to say it was like the 1700s, 1800s, somewhere around there. And that is at the height of the bird's egg collection phase, where all across Europe, everybody wanted these fancy seabirds' eggs because they came in all these different colors and sizes, and it was like very fashionable to collect them. So we have that going on. Then we also have modern day, where we meet a couple of young guys. One of them, Nick, his mom actually owned one of these very rare collectible eggs, but it gets stolen. And so we were on the chase for where this egg went and who took it, while also learning about the industry of these egg collectors. However, the whole story was very it's almost kind of shallow, if that makes sense. There wasn't a lot of like emotion involved. It was very just kind of, I don't know, I'm gonna say almost hands off in a way, because it just felt no connection with the characters or even really much of the storyline. And it was pretty predictable. One thing going forward is that it was fast paced, so I got through it pretty quickly. But yeah, it was maybe not the greatest start to my summer reading, but that's okay because it does get better from there. Because once I finished up with this book, which I gave about 3 stars because it was just okay, I probably wouldn't read Belinda Bauer again, and I wouldn't really recommend it because it was kind of boring. So let's move on to book number two. So book two was Saxon, the Book of Dreams by Severin. It is a historical fiction that follows a young princely named Sigwulf as after King Mercia of King Mercia. After King Offa of Mercia lays waste to poor Sigwulf's family, he ends up shipping the young princeling off to Aachen, which is in Francia. This is the first in a trilogy that follows Sigwulf, and I really, really enjoyed this book. I thought the writing was beautiful, great prose. It had a very nice pacing, and it was exciting right up into the end. Like the climax was actually fairly close to the end, so as we're getting closer and the pages are just turning by, because it was just like, oh my god, what's going to happen next? Really good. Really enjoyed this one. I would totally recommend it, and I will definitely be reading more Severin. In fact, later on in this video, there is another Severin book, so stay tuned for that. So I did end up giving this one 5 stars because I really enjoyed it. Now thinking back, I don't know, I think maybe 4.5 is probably closer to what it is, but either way, really enjoyed it, and yeah, it was a good book. Then that brings us to the third and final book of July, was Isaac Asimov's Prelude to Foundation. So this is a prequel to his original Foundation trilogy that he wrote back in, was it, I think like the 60s? Which I have not read the original. I decided to start with the prequel. So Asimov fans, please don't hate me. I needed a book for 1988. That was the book, so that's what I went with, and I'm glad I did read it because I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. It was a good one. I love sci-fi, and I thought Isaac's writing was really nice, very fast-paced. Got a clever way of how he delivers information. So he describes a character in a certain way, only giving you some details, and so that you're left in the dark about who he might actually be. There was one character in particular where he gave no visual description of the character when we first meet him. And then later on, you find out, oh, he's been popping in and out of this story, just you didn't realize because he used a different way to describe the character. So I thought that was pretty clever. It was good. The character's really good. The main character, there were so many times where I was just like, oh my god, Harry Seldon, what is wrong with you? So smart yet so stupid. But it was good. I really enjoyed it. I loved Isaac's writing, and I am looking forward to reading the rest of the Foundation series because it was good, and I want to see the rest of it. So I do love a good sci-fi, and Isaac Asimov is like one of the big names in sci-fi. So it was fun reading his work. And that takes us to the next month. I got quite a bit of reading done in August. It was so gorgeous outside, so I spent a lot of time in my backyard and soaking in that heat. Gotta love it. The first book I read was The Alias Grace, written by Margaret Atwood, is a historical fiction that tells the true story of Grace Marks and James McDermott, who were convicted of unaliving Thomas Kinnear, their boss, and his mistress Nancy Montgomery back in like the 1700s in Ontario, Canada. I did really like the fact that this was like an old crime case from Canada. I think that was really fun being a Canadian, and it was a story I'd never heard before, so it was pretty cool. It's quite the story. Grace has had a pretty difficult, challenging life, as many did back then, when you were a poor Irish family. So you get her whole backstory of how she came across the boat from Ireland to Canada, and her very abusive father that forced her to work to basically pay for their rent and his alcohol. And she was just a kid. She wasn't even 13 yet when she was sent off to be a housemaid. And so you get her whole little story leading up to the unalivings and everything that happened after that. And it's told from Grace's perspective in first person present. It threw me off a little bit because there were no quotation marks throughout any of the dialogue when it was being told from her perspective. It definitely was something to get used to. By the time I got about halfway through, I was fine with it, but it was something at first that really jarred me. It was just like, oh, wait, oh, somebody was talking. But it's okay. The book is still really, really good. The writing was really good. It was interesting. It was pretty funny at times. And just the whole premise I thought was pretty cool. She's talking to, which would have been like a psychiatric doctor at the time, about everything that had happened. He was trying to unlock certain secrets to see, was she really guilty, or is she also a victim of James McDermott? And while she did spend about 30 years in prison for these crimes, she was eventually acquitted and released and pardoned, and she moved down to the States. But it was an interesting read. I liked it way more than I thought I was going to, and I did really like Margaret Atwood's writing, so I would definitely check out more of her work. There are a few novels that I've heard are really, really good that I'd like to read. So yeah, this is a good introduction to Margaret Atwood, and I would recommend it. I think I gave this about 4 stars. I don't know if I would reread it again, but I definitely did like it, and it was worth the read. So that was number 1 for August. So book 2, another Tim Severin book. So I enjoyed the Book of Dreams so much that I picked up the second one, The Emperor's Elephant, which takes us back to Sigwulf. This time, he has been tasked with acquiring and delivering a bunch of exotic animals to the Caliph of Baghdad to help relations between Francia and the Middle East. So it was quite an adventure as he goes off with a menagerie of animals and having to coordinate the travel with these creatures and over land and on boats across the sea. And man, everything that could go wrong did go wrong. It was amazing that Sigwulf even made it home alive, because there were so many times where it could have ended very, very badly for him. And it had kind of like a sad ending. Like Sigwulf, he ended up falling in love and then losing that love. And his best friend also kind of left him. And there was another young boy that was kind of in his charge. He was supposed to be taking care of him, and that kid died. And yeah, he was in a rough state when he returned home. So I'm interested to see what the final book will be like and what happens to Sigwulf, because he's certainly had a challenging life. But I really enjoy these books. Tim Severin's got great writing, and it was another good one. Not quite as good as the first, but I did really enjoy it. So yeah, that was book number 2 in August. Then I decided to challenge myself to read for 24 hours. And in that 24 hours, I tackled 3 different fairy tale themed books. They were a lot of fun to read. I enjoyed doing the challenge. Um, so it was cool. Right, so first up was Little Thieves, told from a villain's point of view. Although the main character, she is a bit of a villain. She's a criminal, she's a thief. She's never hurt anybody physically, but she has definitely hurt their pocketbooks. And, the law kind of starts catching up with her. But she's not the worst one in the world. There are some troublesome folks that are causing way more problems than what she is. And she has to deal with the consequences of her actions, for she has been busted stealing. Then she's also got to deal with the fact that she stole someone's identity, and now that secret's been revealed, and so she's under a lot of pressure from that. Quite the adventure. It was a fun story. It is young adult, and it was definitely felt like on the younger side of the young adult, but it was a fun story. I enjoyed it. I think if you are like a teen, you'd love it. There are 2 other books in this series. I don't know if I would read them, perhaps if I got bored, but a lot of other books out there that are far more interesting. The second book I read in that challenge was called Cinder, and it was a retelling of the Cinderella fairy tale. Only this time, Cinder is actually a cyborg, so we have some sci-fi thrown in with the mix, which I thought was a lot of fun. And it was a pretty fast-paced book. The characters and everything, the writing was all right, but it was really, really, really predictable. All these big reveals, yeah, I saw them coming from a mile away. It was definitely very much on the juvenile side of the young adult. I think, being 12 years old, I probably would have loved this book and would be diving into the rest of the series. But I am not 12 years old, and it was very, very simple. And though I did, enjoy it, it was pretty predictable. And it was just like, it's a little on the boring side when you can predict everything that's coming. So it was just like, oh, yeah, it could have been better. But, it was okay. So it is the first book in a series. I think there's 5 or 6 books, and they use different fairy tales for each one. The world building that they've got, I think, is kind of interesting. There is people living on the moon, the Lunars, and they don't get along with people on Earth. And so there is kind of like this conflict that is going around in the world on top of everything that's happening to poor Cinder. And instead of losing a shoe, she loses her cyborg foot, which I thought was a funny little detail. I had a good chuckle about that. But yeah, it was all right. Would I read the rest of it? Maybe. I am kind of curious to find out what happens, but at the same time, kind of not. So we'll see. Maybe. But it was all right. But the third one I read, and the last one that I read in August, was called The Hazelwood. And it is a dark fairy tale. I loved it. It was my favorite out of the 3. I had a lot of fun with this one. I thought the writing was great, really good lines. The main character was fun and spunky, and she had a lot of attitude, and I really enjoy kind of like the darker, creepier fairy tales that were created in the story. So I thought it was a lot of fun. And it is the first out of a duology. And I will definitely be reading the second one, as well as Tales from the Hinterland, because the author that wrote it, oh, I guess I should explain kind of more about the premise of it. Okay. So The Hazelwood, I really enjoyed this one. It was a lot of fun. I love the characters. Our main character, she was she's a firecracker. She was spunky and very determined and stubborn, and she carried the story very, very well. I quite enjoyed it. The writing was good. There's a lot of funny kind of details and moments in it. But my favorite part was kind of the world building and how, so in it, basically, her grandmother wrote these fairy tales and somehow they're coming to life. Well, it turns out that it's not exactly just fairy tales. It's Tales from Hinterland literally came from things that happened in Hinterland. And I don't want to go into too much because the reveal at the end that explains it all was a lot of fun. So I wouldn't want to spoil it. But basically, it's like fairy tales have come to life and they have to try to survive it. And Alice, our main character, her mother is taken, disappears, and so she's on a journey to try to find her mother. Yeah, it was good. I really enjoyed this one. It is the first out of a duology. I definitely want to read the next one. I want to see what else happens to Alice because she had a great story arc, and the whole thing was just so well done. A lot of fun with it. It is young adult, but it reads more on the higher end of the young adult. So I did quite enjoy this one, and definitely the best out of the three that I read for my challenge. So that took up all of August, which brings us now to so September. The first book I read was Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins from the Hunger Games series. And oh my God, this was the best out of all the Hunger Games books that I've read. I'm pretty sure it's my favorite out of them. It was so friggin' good. Oh my God. It tells Haymitch's story. So if you are familiar with the Hunger Games, you know that Haymitch in the first trilogy was the mentor for Katniss and Peeta. And this is his story, how he survived the Hunger Games. And oh my God, be prepared to have your heart ripped out. Make sure you've got a box of Kleenex. I could barely finish reading the end of this book through the tears. It was so emotional, and I don't usually cry a lot like that when I'm reading. Wow. Yeah, Suzanne knocked this one out of the park. It was so good, and oh, so heartbreaking. Poor Haymitch. Oh, I think he has now become my very favorite character out of the whole franchise because, wow, what a story. I highly recommend reading it. However, do read the books in publication order, not in chronological order, because it'll make a difference. If you try to read like Sunrise on the Reaping first, it will not have the same impact. That is for sure. It's like on its own, yes, it is a very good book, great characters, great plot. It moves along at a really good pace and like it's intense. Some of the scenes that take place like at the actual games are just like yikes. There was a couple of times where I actually had to just kind of close the book and I'm just like, oh wow, okay. Oh my God. So good. I think that so far might be one of my favorite reads of the year. We'll see. It's like that and Red Rising, man. So good, so good. So yeah, that was how I started off September. So I started off really strong. Then I slowed things down just a little bit with 2001: A Space Odyssey by Arthur C. Clarke, who is, like Asimov, another big name in the sci-fi biz. This book has been around for a long time, and it was written in tandem with the movie that came out, which I thought that was pretty cool. It's a neat idea. I did enjoy the book to some degree. However, I felt that it was kind of lacking in some department. It was very disconnected from the characters. There really was barely even a main character. It was all very removed and kind of monotonous throughout the whole thing. Just there wasn't a whole lot. And like even in moments when it was just like, oh my God, somebody's gonna die, it was just like, oh yeah, he's gone. Yep, moving on. And it was just like, oh, okay, sure. I feel like it will probably make a better movie just because you'll have the lighting and the angles and the music and the emotions on the actors' faces to really draw you in. So my prediction is that the movie will be better than the book, which very rarely happens. But I'm curious to see how it will be. Because I did find that there was very little emotional connection and there's no backstory on characters. Like it was just all very, I guess, because it's not really a story about characters. There wasn't even really a whole ton of plot. It was very speculative and introspective, I think. It's a book, I think, to make you think, just to wonder at the amazement of the vastness of space that we know so little about. So it definitely is not for everyone. I wasn't even sure how to actually rate this book. I don't know how I want to rate it yet. Because on one hand, it was good, but on the other hand, it was just like, was it though? I don't know. Even though it's been several weeks, I'm still not exactly sure how I feel about it all. So it's unrated at this point. If you like Arthur C. Clarke and you love sci-fi, or you're a fan of the movie, I would recommend reading it. I think you would get enjoyment out of it. But if you're not a sci-fi fan, don't waste your time, because you will not enjoy this. No, you'll DNF it. It'll be boring, because it was, just not one of those like big action impact books. All right, so that was book number 2. Yes. All right, so that was book number 2. Then I picked up The Time Ministry by Kaliana. That's how you say her name, Kaliana. So I picked this one up because I had seen it on booktube, and a lot of people were talking about it online, and it sounded really interesting. People were raving about it, and I thought, well, I love time travel and sci-fi mixed with historical fiction. I thought that sounded really cool. I'm like, ooh, hybrid genre, fun. And I forgot that romance was also one of the genres that it covers. And there was some hints at it, but it was like, yeah, whatever. And then we come to a bedroom scene. I'm like, oh, right, there's romance in this. It was kind of awkward. I felt like I was invading their privacy, just the little conversations they're having while they're doing it was just like, okay, sure. So this one is a book about time travel, in a way. We've got a government ministry who found a time door and decided to use it because, of course, they found some interesting technology and it could be useful. It could be a weapon. So naturally, they've got to see how they can use it. They start off with bringing 7 people out of time. So they went back to 1800s, 1700s, 1600s. They went back and they grabbed a bunch of people, brought them back to modern day life. Some of them did not survive the transfer, but most of them did. And so they've brought these people back, but now, of course, they have to adjust to modern day London, and that's not an easy thing to do. So they have bridges, and they are people that will live with these time expats and help them adjust to the new world and their new lives. So the narrator is told in first person by one of these bridges. We never actually get her name. The only time she kind of refers to herself in the name is just, I'm your bridge, when she introduces herself. So we have no idea what her name is, which I thought was kind of weird. You're basically main character, but has no name. And just like, okay, yeah, the bridge or the girl, all I can refer to her as, which was a little odd. But, it's all right. So the whole premise was really cool. I had a lot of fun with the idea. And the bridge's expat that she gets is Commander Graham Gore. He was on the Franklin expedition to the Arctic when he was lost to the ice and snow. But the ministry rescued him and brought him to modern day. And he's quite hilarious. There was quite a few lines that I quite enjoyed from him. So some of his dialogue was pretty funny. But overall, the writing style was interesting. There were times I'd be in the conversation and one of them would just be like, huh. And then that would be the end of the conversation. It's like, just, huh? Sure, okay. But overall, it was okay. I don't know what everybody was raving about. I didn't really get it. It was no 5-star read for me. I would go with a 3-star. Like, it was all right. It was interesting. I like the premise more than the actual book. But if you do like something kind of light, not too complicated, then and if you like romance, I guess there wasn't even a whole ton of romance in it. I gave it a 3-star. One was just not really it for me. So yeah, move on to the next one. So the next book I read was volume 6 from the Blue Exorcist manga series. It's a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying it. I love the show, and I'm glad to see that they stayed very faithful in their adaptation. So it's been good seeing that. So in this one, we get the theft of the Imperial King's, I think, his left eye. So he had 2 eyes that were taken from his body hundreds of years before that were kept in separate places to keep them safe because they can wreak a lot of damage and havoc around the world. And they have now been stolen. And we get to see in this one how that second eye gets stolen. So it was fun. Again, it's like, I finished these in like half an hour. I sat down, boom, done. And now I'm just waiting for volume 7. So that was The Blue Exorcist, which brings us to our last and 13th book that I read for the summer. And that is The Life of Pi by Yann Martel. When I started reading this book, I was under the impression that it was based on a true story. And somebody had told me years ago that it was. And at the very beginning, he goes off about how, I wrote this story after I went to India to write a story about Prague, but then I met this man that told me about this guy that had a crazy story. So I went to Toronto and I met him and wrote his story down. Turns out the whole thing's completely fictional, which I go into a big old rant in my video. I did do a read with me video that involves this. I am still filming that one though, so we'll have to wait before you can see that. And I go into a big old rant on that. So I will not go into my rant on this one. I will say, however, that Martel's writing is quite beautiful. I did love his prose. Very vivid, very visceral, and it's very beautiful. It has this almost musical cadence to the way he writes, which was really good. Speeds up when things get intense and slows down when it's being very contemplative. I am still debating how I feel about this book. The writing was really good. I thought the characters were great, and it was just surreal. The first 100 pages were really, really slow and hard to get through, but the rest of it was really good. But I am still kind of torn on how I officially feel about the book. But I finally read this. It has been sitting on my shelf for a very, very, very long time. I actually completely forgot I even owned this book until I was looking for something else, and I pulled it out. And I'm like, oh, I have this. Huh. Never read it, never watched it, nothing. So I'm like, well, it's about time. So I finally did it. I finally read this book. I wish it was true, because that would have been really cool. I think I'm still a little bitter about that. I haven't gotten over it yet. Yann Martel lied to me. But yeah, so it was pretty good. It was an interesting story. But you can hear more about that when that video comes out in a couple of months. Probably November. That one should be out for November, because October is going to be dedicated to spooky season. This is not spooky at all. So you will not be seeing this in October, but maybe November. But either way, that is the last book that I read in September, and now it is October, and it is time for spooky season. So I will see you in the next video. Bye!